Welcome to the Accidental Experts podcast. I'm your host, Bryce Hamilton. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and a child and family therapist. I have been in practice for over 15 years, and I'm also a mom of 4. So I know the challenges both professionally and personally. I'm so glad that you're here today to grow your parenting toolbox. Please come as you are and be ready to learn. My goal is to make you the accidental expert so that you can raise healthy humans. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I'm so glad you're with us today. So we have a special guest. Her name is Dr. Nadine Macaluso. Her patients know her as Dr. Nay, and she is the real life inspired behind Naomi Belfort's character in The Wolf on Wall Street. She survived a turbulent 8-year marriage to Jordan Belfort, marked by abuse, greed, and trauma. Following her experience, Dr. Macaluso relocated to California. Her journey of trauma and healing inspired her to return back to school at the age of 39, where she earned her master's in counseling and a PhD in somatic psychotherapy. She further specialized with a 2-year postdoctoral training in the Neuro-affective Relational Model. As a therapist, Dr. Macaluso combines her education and personal experience to help others heal from trauma. Her practice focuses on assisting patients in connecting with their authentic selves, fostering confidence, resilience, and agency. Dr. Macaluso firmly believes in the potential for post-traumatic growth, instilling hope in her patients and guiding them to reach their potential in life and love. With that, let's get to Dr. Macaluso.
Thank you so much for having me.
I am so excited to talk about this topic because I think it's something that so many people don't even know what trauma bonding is or how to notice it. And so I want to help parents recognize this in their own relationships, but also the relationships that their kids are having. And so I'm so excited for you to be here to talk about this.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, so let's jump into it. So can you explain in the simplest of terms what trauma bonding is and how it develops in relationships?
Sure. So trauma bonding in its simplest form is a toxic dysfunctional relationship between two emotionally attached people. So you're not going to have a trauma bond with barrister at Starbucks, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to be emotionally attached to the person. But what makes it extremely toxic and dysfunctional is that one of the partners, the pathological predatory partner, wants power and control over their lover.
Okay.
Right. So that's just not a healthy dynamic because we should all just be able to be ourselves in relationships.
Yeah.
And so for it to be a trauma bond, though, it has to have 2 conditions. The first one is a power imbalance.
Okay.
And so what is power? Power is simply the ability to influence somebody else, right?
Mm-hmm.
And even if you start off as equals in the beginning of the relationship, a power imbalance gets created through just the very fact that you love somebody.
Mm-hmm.
They can have influence and power over you. Just hopefully they wouldn't use and abuse it, right?
Yes.
The second thing is maybe you are emotionally dependent on that person or financially dependent upon that person and their resources. And then the third one is if someone's very threatening, dominating, intimidating to you throughout the relationship, you develop fear, the victim develops fear, and so the partner has power. So that's the power imbalance. The second piece is a behavioral pattern called intermittent reinforcement, which sounds fancy and psychobabble, but it's really simple. 15% of the time, the pathological predatory person is like Romeo. They're generous and kind and helpful and loving and warm. But that 85%, or let's say it's 70-30, I call them Dirty John. And they're cruel, controlling, betraying, abusing, exploiting, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's that mix of those 2 extreme people that you're in love with that create extreme feelings inside of us that actually create the bond.
Okay.
So power and control, power imbalance, and intermittent reinforcement.
Okay. So we mentioned like men in this part of like Romeo and then Dirty John. So is it like a heterosexual relationship kind of thing? Can it be?
The way I write about it is the men as the predatory pathological person, but of course women can be that as well. It knows no socioeconomic status, no race, no sexual orientation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Any person in the relationship can be the predatory pathological one that wants power and control.
Yeah. Okay.
So it could be man, woman, it doesn't matter. But it is a more gendered experience,
Mm-hmm.
where the research in my room does show that it is usually men that exhibit these traits more.
Yeah. Okay. So, and we talked about the criteria. So why can trauma bonding feel so strong even when the relationship is harmful or unsafe? Like, why don't people just leave? Or like, I
Yeah,
know that this is like, such a maybe silly question, but it's like, why stay,
well, okay, so there's a few reasons why. The first reason why is that the person, your lover doesn't start out
Mm-hmm.
hurting you,
Yeah.
right? They start out love bombing you, right? Which means giving you tons of love, tons of adoration, maybe gifts, maybe picking up dinner for you every single night, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're very generous and kind, so they present their best selves, and you fall in love with that best self.
Mm-hmm.
And then when the Dirty John mask comes, the Romeo mask usually comes back, and then you're like, oh, there they are.
Mm-hmm.
Oh God, that was just a moment. They didn't really mean that. They were just drunk that night.
Mm-hmm.
And so hope is the hook, because Romeo, even though it's not consistent and it's intermittent, he does show his face time and
Mm-hmm.
time again. And the other reason is that intermittent reinforcement is the most addictive behavioral pattern. Think
Mm-hmm.
about gambling and the slot
Yes.
machines, right? You're always waiting for that next dopamine hit.
Mm-hmm.
And so you tolerate a lot more abuse waiting to get Romeo to give you that love bomby dopamine experience again.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times we also don't leave because of fear,
Mm-hmm.
right? If this person has threatened us or has a bad temper or becomes rageful, we don't leave because we fear them. And maybe if it's an older person, maybe they have children or they're married and their families are attached. But there's a lot of reasons why people don't leave.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So talk to me about so who is likely to be how do we notice this? Or what are some red flags
Yeah.
that either parents should be looking for in their kids' relationships or just in general we should be looking for that might suggest that this is happening?
Yeah, it's a really important question. And that's one of the reasons I wrote my book. I really want to educate young people because the research shows that young adults 18 to 24 are the most likely to end up in a trauma
Mm-hmm.
bond, right? Because they're naive, they're
Mm-hmm.
trusting. They've
Mm-hmm.
been sold the myth of romantic love that somebody's going to come sweep them off their feet. And so when that happens, they're like, okay, I've met a unicorn. Let's do this thing, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, but some of the red flags specifically to look for, like we could look at the red flags two different ways. So we could look at red flags if you're on a date,
Mm-hmm.
right? Does the person have too many drinks of alcohol? Do you notice that they don't let you talk that much, right? Or that when let's say after dinner, you want to go somewhere or they want to take you somewhere and you set a boundary. How do they respond? Do they listen to that boundary or do they go crazy, right? Do you notice that their words aren't matching their actions? That they say they're going to do something repeatedly, but then they never do it. And now, if you're a parent and you're witnessing your teenager, are they isolating? Do you notice they're not with their friends as much anymore? Do you know that they're only with hyper focused on this one partner? Do you notice that they're not sharing as much with you,
Mm-hmm.
right? For fear that then you're going to tell them, hey, this is crazy. You need to run like hell.
Mm-hmm.
Or do you notice your teenager even engaging in self-harm behavior, right? Because of this romance that's gone sideways.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I think if you see your teenager isolating from their friends and not partaking in their normal activities because they have to be so hyper focused on their lover, that's a
Mm-hmm.
problem.
Yeah. And okay, so is trauma bonding also a way to say domestic violence? Is
Yeah.
it always violent?
So here's the thing about a trauma bonds, right? The person wants power and control over you. So how do they do that? So there's a term called coercive control,
Mm-hmm.
and that can be nonviolence, right? We're used to thinking of domestic violence as one physical incident.
Yeah.
It's not like that anymore. It can be emotional and verbal abuse, right? Disparagement, mimicking, cruelty, insults. It can also be telling you, don't wear that lipstick, don't wear that dress, don't eat that food, right? Don't hang out with those people,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's really where the partner's autonomy is getting taken away. So
Mm-hmm.
no, it doesn't have to be physical. It can be manipulation,
Mm-hmm.
right? It can be a partner cheating on you and then gaslighting you and saying, you read that text wrong,
Mm-hmm.
right? So there's emotional and verbal abuse, there's manipulation, and there's control, and it happens in very subtle, different ways that a lot of the outside world doesn't see.
Yes. Yeah, it's very, excuse me, behind closed doors,
That's right.
right? They're normally not acting this way in public.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. And if they are, then you have a real problem,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because initially it usually happens behind closed doors, and then it can escalate to the point where the
Mm-hmm.
pathological person doesn't even care.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But yeah, it usually happens behind closed doors. And that's why the victim feels so crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because everybody thinks that they're such a great person, or like you're
Exactly.
in this perfect relationship, you're so lucky, and they're
Right.
thinking, oh my gosh, if you only knew what it
That's
was
right.
really
That's
like.
right. That's right. And then, especially for a younger person and even for an older person, right? Here you are, you fall madly in love with somebody, you think you've met this fantastic unicorn, but then you realize it's not. And then there's so much shame,
Mm-hmm.
embarrassment.
Yes.
How'd I fall for this? I don't want to tell
Mm-hmm.
people I fell for this.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay. So you mentioned a term, gaslighting. I feel like this is something that is so online, right? All the social
Yeah.
media platforms.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you describe what really gaslighting is? Because I
Yeah.
think sometimes we broaden it
Yeah.
maybe too broad. Yeah.
It's really when someone is distorting your perception of reality. So you believe something, you think you've witnessed something, and the person vehemently denies that to your face.
Mm-hmm.
And you didn't see that. That didn't happen. I don't even know what you're talking about. You're totally crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So they are wiping out your perspective. Another word I like to use is perspecticide. Like they're wiping out your perspective because what do they want? Again, gaslighting is the best way to get control over someone, one of the best
Mm-hmm.
ways to get control over someone's mind, because you're constantly making them second guess themselves and self
Mm-hmm.
doubt themselves. Then they're like, oh, wait, no, that didn't happen. And then that's another great way to have control
Mm-hmm.
when you
Yeah.
have, right, when the person's riddled in self-doubt, they're easier to
Mm-hmm.
control.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so what type of person want I mean, like when I think about like my relationship with my husband, like I mean, there are things where I'm like, "Oh, let's not do this." Like I want to control certain things or not control
Yeah,
like I don't care about a lot, but there's certain things I do want a certain way,
yeah,
right? That would seem like okay for us to have like an opinion about
of
that, but like
course.
without coercion or trying to be like his puppeteer, right? Like to be the
Exactly,
person trying to
exactly. That's different, right? Of course, we're all going to have our opinions. We're all going to have discernment over what we want and what we don't want. But what happens in a trauma bond is that the victim can't have an opinion.
Mhm.
She can't have a say or he can't have a say, right? It's when you're living with a pathological person or loving them, it's their way or the highway. And it's
Mhm.
a pattern of behavior, right? It's
Mhm.
not a one-off.
Yes.
This coercion and this need to dominate is woven throughout the whole entire relationship in all areas of the relationship.
Mhm. Mhm. Yes. Okay, so like what I guess what would be a person why would somebody want this much power? Like what is not going right in their life that would want them to have power over another person or I
Yeah,
mean,
that's a great, great question. Like, why do they do that? Well,
yes, why?
there's a reason why they do it is because they, at any cost, want to get all their needs met for money, power,
Mm,
pleasure, and status.
okay.
Right. So that's a great question. What is the motivation behind it? A lot of times, there's multiple causality. Another reason could be they have severe anxiety, right?
Mhm.
Controlling a love object can theoretically, I'm using air quotes, calm down a person's anxiety.
Mm, mhm.
But really, I do think it's mostly about is they want to get their needs met when they want to get their needs met, how they want to get their needs met. And it's really all about them. There's not, there's only their identity. There's not really your identity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's just not room. Their identity is taking up so much space. Yeah.
Exactly. There's no room because I say that love is the quality of connection, loyalty, trust, respect, warmth, tenderness that you feel with a person. There's a second piece of love that we really don't talk about, and that's giving your partner, your child, whoever you're in relationship with, the space to really be who they authentically are.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't get to do that in a trauma bond.
Yeah. Well, and I think we don't talk about it. Like, that's not like when I think about when you're talking to teens, right? Like,
Yeah.
one of the things that I think we also don't do just in general is talking to them about what relationships look like, or what do they think that relationship should look like. Yeah.
Completely. And that's why I try to always illuminate that definition, because it's a really important piece of love. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Even with my own children, I had to give them the space to be who they are. I may
Yes.
not agree with it all,
Yeah.
but they're their own human. Humans are allowed to have autonomy and agency. And especially, I think, for young girls, we live in a patriarchal society where they're conditioned to be good girls and to please and to giggle. And I was like that, right? And to give in and to tolerate, because we are very relational beings as women. We have to be to give birth, right? The species would not survive. And so I just think we've been conditioned to think like that in general, instead of thinking like, no, I need to be my own person in this relationship. I have the right to be my own person. I have the right to my own needs. I have the right to my own feelings, my own wants, and my desires. I have the right to honor my values.
Yeah. Well, and I think, we oftentimes, I'm hoping that we're making changes in this, but I think oftentimes we are seeing maybe our mom do everything for our dad, right? And so then it's like, then we think that's what a good wife looks like, or that's what a good partner looks like, or that's what healthy relationships look like, or this is what's expected of me.
That's right. That's right.
And then we then act that out, even if that isn't what we want. We feel like, we want to do a good job.
It's been modeled for us. I mean, there's a saying, monkey see, monkey do, right?
Yeah.
And it's so apparent. I have a 2-year-old grandson, and I was on a business call and I'm pacing back and forth. All of a sudden, he picks up a toy and takes the phone and starts pacing back and forth. And he'd never done that before. So, and I think as young women, they've been taught like self-sacrifice, self-abandonment. That means love, and it doesn't.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so how can we talk to our daughters about what healthy relationships look like? Like, what are the things that we should be encouraging within them?
Yeah, that love is between two equals, right? And that you have to be able to have a voice in your relationship. You have to be able to say no. You have to be able to set boundaries. If you say no and set boundaries, that doesn't mean that you're a bad person. You have to tolerate the guilt of protecting yourself and being authentic. And that's and love needs to be reciprocated. It can't just be one way, always going out, you giving, sacrificing yourself, self-abandoning to meet this other person's needs. Your needs count, your needs matter, your feelings matter, you matter.
So what should we be talking to our sons about then?
Same thing, yeah. And same thing, I had the same conversations with both of my children. They're both older adults, not now. And also teaching your children that for someone to love you, they have to be able to hear you. If somebody can't hear you, they can't love you. And so, I have the most amazing son-in-laws that are all wonderful partners, right? But they've just been taught, and my girls too, who are wonderful wives, like, you got to respect each other. You got to be kind to each other. You got to speak to each other nicely. If you have an argument or you say something stupid, because we all do, that's okay. Take accountability and make a repair. Say, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Right. Because pathological people don't have remorse, empathy, or compassion. So they're never wrong, and they blame us for everything. So if you're in a relationship where there's issues, because there's always issues, and you notice that your partner is blaming you for everything, that's a huge red flag.
Yeah. Because I mean, I think the truth is we all own our part in every situation. So if there's an argument, there's probably something that each person has contributed
Of
to the
course.
dynamic. Yeah.
Of course they have. But if you're with a pathological person, it's the number one sign is that it's never their fault and it's always your issue. They're
Mm-hmm.
drinking, they're cheating, they're whatever they're doing, it's all your fault.
Mm-hmm.
So, and if nothing's their fault, then they have nothing to fix. They're not
Yeah.
going to change.
No.
The
Yeah.
relationship can't grow.
Yes. Yeah. And we're growing regardless of
Right.
whether we want to. We're either apart or together, I think is good
That's
advice that I got.
yes.
Yeah.
And real true love is like the concern for the growth of another.
Yeah.
Right? You want to facilitate growth. You don't want to hold somebody back because of your
Mhm.
own insecurity.
Yes. Yeah. So true. And it's hard sometimes, especially with our children, right? Like we want them to become the best versions of themselves.
Yeah,
And often that's not I haven't raising my children has not been a straight path, right? Like
of
it's
course
bumpy.
not. No, it's raw and it's messy.
Yes, exactly. So it's I mean that way too as we're growing as adults even, right?
That's
Into
right.
the best version of ourselves. Like our partners are going to struggle too and it's going to be hard to let them struggle through things, but sometimes you have to.
That's right.
Oh, yeah, I hate that part.
That's
But yes, but
why
it's
you're a therapist.
necessary.
That's why
Yes.
you're a therapist.
Okay, so what I guess okay, let's talk about before I have so many questions about this. I love learning more about this. But so when we think about kids who are exposed to trauma bonding, like maybe their parents are in a trauma bond
Yeah.
relationship, right? Or as a teenager, they are dating somebody in a relationship like that. So how can that impact their future relationships or their emotional development?
Yeah, so that's really important question because when you let's say you're growing up in a house and you're recognizing your parents have an unhealthy dynamic,
Hmm.
right? Like one of the parents is more pathological and has power and control. And so it's really tricky because sometimes what I've seen is that usually the oldest child can identify with the aggressor and really mimic the aggressor.
Hmm.
Okay. Because they don't want to be like the parent that they think is weak. Like, I
Yeah.
don't want to be like my mom. She seems weak. Like she's letting them walk all over her. She's a
Hmm.
doormat. I want to be like my dad. Then they start acting out and acting aggressive and dominating. And that might not even be the core truth of who they are,
Yeah.
but it almost seems safer to do that.
Hmm.
And what happens in these families too is that the parents can form coalitions and like, you pick this child, I'll pick this child. And
Hmm.
that can be really hard on the family and on the
Yes.
children, right?
Uh-huh.
And, and the research shows that children that, let's say, witness domestic violence, like true domestic violence, physical violence, often go on to perpetrate that themselves,
Hmm. Yeah.
and especially if you grow up in a home where there's this sort of uneven power dynamic and nothing's spoken about. Because usually in these homes, feelings aren't processed, the whole family's gaslit, or the whole family presents a facade that's not real to the world. And then all this crazy stuff is going on behind the scenes, and the
Hmm.
children feel embarrassed. That's a lot for a teenager to handle. A
Yeah.
teenager's just figuring out their own self.
Hmm.
Meanwhile, they're having to hold all the dysfunction of the family and pretend it's not happening.
Yeah.
It's very challenging because the parents don't just affect each other. Of course, they affect the children.
Sure. Yeah. So then do you find that like you mentioned that the oldest oftentimes will
Mimic, yeah,
connect with the mimic the aggressor. So
yeah,
what do the younger children do? Are they somebody who's like more protective over the
yeah.
victim?
Sometimes it could be that way. The younger child is more protective over the victim, or they just shut down and totally shut off from the
Hmm.
family, just isolate and are in their rooms all the time. Because a lot of times, the older child, if they identify with the aggressor and becomes more of a perpetrator, does it to the younger child,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then here, the mother is like, "Oh my God, I finally left my abuser, and now my child's doing it in my home."
Yeah.
Right? And a lot of times with pathological people, they will try to fracture the attachment between the other parent and the children.
Hmm.
So they'll really try to interfere with the attachment. So
Mhm.
there's so many things that can happen in a family that's where there's a trauma bond or
Mhm.
intimate partner violence, even if it's not physical violence, right?
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, just as damaging, right? I mean, obviously the
Yeah,
physical part, you see broken bones or bruises and right, but this
just
is like all
damaging,
internal.
and sometimes almost more because there's no proof.
Yeah.
So there's that saying, you might see this on social media, I wish he would just hit me already,
Mhm.
right? Because then it'll be like, aha, I have it. He's done
Mhm.
this.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, no, it's very, very challenging. And, and to a parent, if you see that your child is in one of these relationships, because it can really happen a lot,
Yeah.
and as with teenagers, I suggest you say to them, do you want to be helped, heard, or held?
Mm.
Because if you start saying to them, break up with them, they're a jerk, which
Mhm.
they probably are, and you're probably right, you shut down the pathway of communication.
Mhm.
And so sometimes you have to bite your lip a little bit, of course, within keeping your child safe, to keep that line of communication open because they will come to you when the relationship has gotten so bad.
Mhm.
And you want to be there to catch them.
Yeah. Well, and it's so hard because I think oftentimes we're ready for them to get out before they're ready to get out. I think that
Oh,
that is pervasive regardless of the age of the person,
that's
right? If you
right.
have a
Oh, yeah.
friend,
Right.
right? Yeah.
Right. Of course. Of course. And, for an older woman, listen, when they choose to leave is when they choose to leave, right? That's a very
Mhm.
personal decision. Plus, we know it's the most dangerous time when a woman
Yeah.
decides to leave. But for a younger adult or teenager, you just keep planting seeds.
Mhm.
Oh, I noticed when you talked about him, you said that you really didn't have a good time and that you spent the whole time fighting and all your friends were at the party having fun, but you were crying in the closet with him. You
Mhm.
just thought that must have been really hard for you,
Mhm.
right? You just start to like not be like, I can't believe you're with this jerk. You need to dump him, right? That will
Mhm.
just alienate your child and make him or her withdraw from you. So you have
Yeah.
to drop seeds, but just keep the lines of communication open.
Well, and I find that especially with adolescents, I mean, it's sometimes this way with children too, but like if you try to get them to stop doing something, the thing they want most is to do that, right? So it's
That's
almost
right.
like you push them into the other person's arms, right? Like if
That's
you're like,
right. That's right. That's right.
yeah, whether
And
it's a friendship, right? Like it's like,
yeah,
oh, don't hang out
here's
with
the
her.
thing
She's such
too.
a bad influence. And then they're like doing everything together. Yeah.
Right. And here's the thing, like we our children are gonna make mistakes
Yeah.
and they're gonna get hurt and they're gonna suffer and nobody wants to see that happen. But there's that thing about giving them the space again.
Hmm.
Right. But then of course if it gets too dangerous, we must dive in.
Yeah.
So that's that fine line, that
Hmm.
walking the tightrope of what's too much and what's too little.
Hmm.
And that's really just a thing you got to feel and go through.
It's so hard. I've
It's
had situations with teenagers in my practice that have been in abusive relationships, right? Definitely trauma bonded, and I have felt like even I can't sometimes get them to talk about that relationship. So it's like I am moving at a snail's pace, right,
that's right.
to
That's right. To
get
get
that information out there.
get them to open up because
Hmm.
eventually it will get so bad that they will
Yes.
need somebody.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Which we don't want, but I think you cannot move it on your timeline. You have
Yeah,
to
you
just
can't. And
take the
it's
space. Yeah.
listen, that's the hard part of loving people is watching them go
Hmm.
through challenging situations in the name of love.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. So are there ways that we can like keep our kids from developing trauma bonds with other
Sure,
people?
sure, you just gotta educate them,
Okay.
right? I mean, give them my book.
Mhm. Yeah.
And or the parent read the book. I've had so many parents reach out to me and so many parents read my book and tons of young women because you have to get educated. We're not taught. We're taught reading, writing, and arithmetic. We're not taught the fourth R, which is relationships, right?
Yes. So
And
true.
and it's kind of crazy because they're the foundation of our whole entire life. But I mean, I had to go to school for 7 years to manage my family. I always say, okay.
Yeah.
But, so the thing is that get educated, learn about this. There's so much information out from a trauma-informed, trained, licensed clinician, right? There's a lot of influence on social media, which I have no problem with. That's fine. But when you really want to talk to your child, you need research, you need academic scholarly research, and talk to them about relationships. What's a healthy relationship? What's not a healthy relationship, right? Someone who loves you, you should not fear them. They should not control you. They should not tell you what lipstick to wear. They should not tell you who you can look at. They should not tell you who you can talk to, right? And just keep having these, right? It's not like a one-time conversation.
Yes.
You know, I mean, the thing that I used to sit there with my children, my daughter in high school, and the boyfriends, and this. Sometimes I have to sit down and talk to her for 2 hours, and again and again and again. You know. But now she's 32 and a therapist and happily married. So it worked. But it takes time of really talking to them without judgment and understanding that their brains are still developing, right?
Yeah.
25.
Yeah.
I mean, our brains are always developing, but you know, that's a crucial time. Adolescence is a crucial time for brain development.
Yeah, and they're going to date people who are not a great fit for them, right? That are jerks, and but it's like learning through that too, right? Like obviously we need to survive it, but like also just learning through that experience to be like, that is not something I want. Like I deserve better. Like I'm not gonna,
I'm not going to
like this.
that.
Yes, exactly.
You know, someone controlling me doesn't equal love. Because like when I was younger, you know, when I was married to the Wolf of Wall Street, right? And I was a 22-year-old girl, and he was so obsessed with me and so controlling. I was like, oh, he just must love me. That's what I told myself.
Yes.
And that wasn't correct.
Yes. Well, and because if you don't know what love is, it can be anything. Somebody else is going to define what it is for you.
That's right. And listen, and if you've been neglected at home or you're raised by a single mom or like your parents, you know, weren't that present, and then someone becomes obsessed with you with all this love bombing and twinning and I love sushi, you love sushi, like they start mirroring you and just, of course, it's going to feel amazing.
Yes.
But here I was saying, if it feels too good to be true, it probably is.
I think it almost always is.
Yeah.
I mean, like, right? Like, because we all have our imperfections, right? So even when you're dating, obviously that's the best version, but it should be like, you should see that there are imperfections that everybody has, because if there aren't, if everybody likes you, if there's no imperfections, then you're not being authentically yourself. There's something not right there.
That's right. That's right. That's right. But, you know, listen, love bombing works because it feels good.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
But you got to look out for it because it could end you in a 8-year trauma bomb like I was.
Yes. Yes. And then it's so hard to get out of, right? The longer it goes on.
Hard. Yeah. You're
so integrated, right?
Yeah. It can be so hard, but you can get out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's the good news, is that there is definitely hope. And there are good men out there. Great people that you can be in relationships with that respect you and give you space. And
I have 4 daughters. They're amazing. Each and every one of them in their own way.
Yeah.
Nice men.
Yes. Amazing. Okay. So what do we do? So if we realize our kid is in a trauma bonding relationship with somebody that they're in a relationship with, we talked about what not to do. Don't tell him he's such a jerk, whatever. What can we do to help them break free but feel supported?
So the thing is that you can really listen to them, be with them through the process, not judge them, don't shame them, right? There's so much stigma already with falling for somebody like this and staying in a trauma bond. So just being really compassionate and kind and understanding. And then if they are in a dangerous situation, then you have to switch and you have to be very firm. But just really, you know, it's no different than how you would really parent during any other time. Right? Is that you want to be a strong enough parent where you set boundaries and you set limits, right? And if the child doesn't listen to them, there are consequences, but you also want to be open, adaptive, and flexible to their experience and who they are. And again, that's like a fine line. It's an art.
Yes.
To be a good parent is an art, but it's possible.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as the child feels like you respect them and like them
Mm-hmm.
and really get them, they will stay attached to you because you want to keep that thread of attachment to them.
Mm-hmm.
You want to keep, even if it's just a little thread, that it's there. I'll never forget one time my son, when he was like 19 and he was out of his mind. And I remember I kneeled on the floor in front of him and I said, I love you enough for you to hate me.
Mm. Yeah.
And it was a hard moment.
Mm-hmm.
But parenting has a lot of those hard moments.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's good for our kids to know that just in general, that we love them even when things are hard. Like, even
That's
when you're upset with me, even
right.
when I'm upset, I still love you, right? Like, even when I feel stressed about something, or you feel stressed, or you don't like that I did something, or I embarrassed you, or whatever it is,
Right.
right? Being able to say, like, the love is still here, no
Right.
matter what.
I love what you like, what you did. But my mother would always say that to me. I don't like what you did, but I love you.
Yeah.
And that was, and that was, 40, 50 years ago. She was way ahead of her time. Um, and you could, like, she also did a funny thing which I'll share with you because it might help anyone who's listening. When my ex got arrested, and she was like, you need to go talk to an attorney. And I was like, okay. She's like, because you maybe could be in trouble, even though of course I wasn't. And I sat down, and the attorney said to me, oh, so I hear you want to get divorced. So she totally tricked me and walked me into a divorce attorney's office. So there's also those little tricks you can do too for your
Mm-hmm.
child.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Helping them down the path. Yeah.
Yeah,
Subtly, right? Yeah.
totally, exactly.
Did it work?
It totally worked. Because
Well,
sometimes
then you have somebody there to tell you the laws and,
I don't know what, maybe I couldn't take that first step, right?
mhm,
I needed her just to like guide me and push me to take that step. And that's what
mhm.
a good parent can do.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes it's going back to what you said about getting educated, right? So if your kid is in a domestic violence relationship or a trauma bond, you could go to the attorney and say and find
Sure.
out what information I need. You could go to the therapist. You
That's right.
could go to these different professionals and say, "Can I share this information with you? Here's what I've learned something. Can I
Correct.
share this with you?"
Correct. Because education is what leads to empowerment.
Yeah. And
That's
they
why
may
we're
not be
having
ready to
this
do,
conversation,
yeah,
right? Because
yeah,
we want to get the information out there.
yeah. And they may not be ready to do what you're suggesting or what some other expert is saying or whatever their information is, but they hear you
That's
nonetheless, right? The
that's
information is there and then it's,
You're just dropping the
rattling
seeds.
around. Yeah.
Yeah, you're dropping the seeds without pressuring.
Yeah. Yes. So great. Okay. So speaking of professionals, so when do you feel like there is a place for professionals to step into these kind of relationships? So like if you notice that your kid is in a trauma bond, like what do you do? Or if you have been raising your
Yeah.
kids in a relationship that has been modeling unhealthy boundaries or
Yes.
uh, domestic violence, when can we or when should we include professionals on this?
Yeah, I think, at any moment, trust your intuition, trust your gut. When this feels like more than you can handle, then it's a great time to reach out to a helper because the
Mhm.
helpers are there.
Yeah.
Right. And there's so many great trauma informed therapists. You definitely need to go to one, though, that's an expert on this.
Hmm.
Right. Just go to a traditional therapist that hasn't been trained in this. Because I went to school for 7 years. I took one adjunct domestic violence class. Okay. The dearth of the lack of education is insanity, especially as a licensed marriage family therapist.
Hmm.
So, but there are so many professionals now that have really made this their specialty: coercive
Yes.
control, trauma bond,
Yes.
narcissistic abuse. Go to one like that, because if you don't go to a clinician that understands it, the clinician can shame you or your
Mhm.
child. They can send you into a situation, back into it. Try to make it work. Maybe you're not doing enough. Maybe
Mhm.
this is your anxious attachment, right? So you really need someone who's an expert in this.
Yes. Yeah, because it's all about safety too, right? I
All about
think
safety.
it really you need somebody who is super knowledgeable about
Super
this or is
knowledgeable.
working in conjunction with a domestic violence center or something. It's somebody who
Yes.
has that level of knowledge. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's really an area of expertise now.
Yes.
As we're seeing on social media, it really is. And I can't tell you how many of my patients have told me how many therapists who were not educated, and it did more harm than good.
Yes. Yes. Okay. So what do you want people listening to this episode to take away from our conversation? What do you think is the most important thing to leave with?
To take away that, first of all, if you're listening to this and you're in a trauma bond, or you know somebody that's in a trauma bond, like, don't shame yourself, don't blame yourself. Anybody and everybody can fall for these sorts of relationships and these sorts of people. We're human beings. We're built for love and connection. And if you don't know, you didn't know, but now you do know.
Mm-hmm.
And that healing's possible.
Yeah.
Right? The research shows that 75% of people who go through some sort of relational trauma like this go on to become better versions of themselves. So don't lose hope. Don't feel shame. The help is out there and the healing is totally possible.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Dr. Nay. This has been such a great conversation. Thank you so much for everything you do and being here today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thanks again, Dr. Nay. This has been such a great and powerful conversation. I hope that you are taking away pieces from this conversation that are going to help you further your relationship and love, and also to help teach our kids what healthy relationships look like and to have conversations proactively before they start dating. With that, I will say thank you so much for your time today. Please like and subscribe to our show. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. And keep the emails coming with future topic suggestions to accidentalexperts@gmail.com. Have a wonderful day. Some words from our legal team.
The information presented in this podcast is not intended or implied to be a substitute for appropriate professional advice, diagnosis, or treatment. All content, including text, graphics, images, and information contained on or available through this podcast, is for general information purposes only. This podcast makes no representations and assumes no responsibility for the accuracy or information on or available through this podcast, and such information is subject to change without notice. You are encouraged to confirm any information obtained through this program with other sources and review all information regarding any condition or treatment with the appropriate professionals.
What we're saying is, yes, I am a real therapist, but I'm not your therapist.